You want to lose elections, stand for nothing. 06, 08, and 12, we put our head down, we stood for nothing, and we got walloped.
If that's your attitude, Mr. President, what the hell are we paying you for?
Sometimes it's hard to tell who's here to start a career and who's here to serve a cause.
It is time for Washington to focus on the few things the Constitution establishes as the federal government's role. Defend our country, provide a cogent foreign policy, and what the heck, deliver the mail, preferably on time and on Saturdays.
Don't you point at me, Rick Perry. Oh, CPAC, the annual conservative yell fest continued in Washington today. It is the place to be if you're a Republican who wants to be president, or if you just like to shout about President Obama and stir up the far-right base. Rick Perry actually scored some points there with that cowboy pose today. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, not so much yesterday, as he took to the stage holding a very large rifle over his head in his best Charlton Heston pose, clearly compensating for his sluggish poll numbers in his re-election bid this fall. How much of a sound and fury signifying nothing event is CPAC? 2 words: Donald Trump, who, by the way, said in his speech that the very much alive Jimmy Carter was dead. Look, CPAC is all about picking political fights, so I guess I caught the fever and I figured I'd pick one right here on the panel. So I've got a thesis for everybody. Republican lawmakers, for the most part, don't really care about the conservative social issues you hear so much about at CPAC. It's just cover for their economic agenda. Okay, discuss. What do you think? Because I have not seen any action on any of the social issues except repeal Obamacare on a federal level at all. It's just stirring up trouble, stirring up the base, and getting out those votes.
Well, look, you got to look where we are. So we all know that every 10 years we redistrict. Now, since Republicans now have districts that are pretty much Republican, and there's only a couple of competitive races in this whole country because they've been redistricted so much, right? So Republicans now have a strong conservative body, a group of folks in their districts now. They're not mixed up as they were prior to this redistricting. So they've got to placate the conservative base, the Tea Party goers. And this is one place to do it. This is the platform to get your message out, to drive your support. We're in midterm elections. This is the cheerleading squad.
They're
not placating, but they're placating to a certain extent because we all do it. I mean, every elected official has to satisfy their base of folks and get them motivated. When I say placate, I mean motivation, but they're also talking about the agenda that they want to move forward and that they need people to be motivated to go out there and support more conservative Republican officials so that we can move this country forward, so that we can get together an agenda that will move this country forward. So we need the Republicans, for example, need to take the Senate. We need to motivate folks so that we can take the Senate and move this country forward. Both the House and the Senate, this country will move forward.
But the Senate is a really different story because it doesn't have this redistricting problem that really protects incumbency, and it's very unfortunate in my opinion. But the Senate is a whole state, and I think they are really out of sync with the majority of voters in every state. I mean, there are some very, very conservative states, and they're going to continue to have Republican senators. But in these other races, you're talking about a diverse, and I don't mean necessarily racially diverse, a diverse group of people with different issues where these social agenda issues are not the top of their ticket. They want jobs, they want economic security, they want to feel safe in America, they want to feel our national security is taken care of. They are not going to buy into this screaming, yelling, right-wing garbage that we just saw.
Here's my thesis, because we had a poll earlier this week that said, if you go down issue by issue, and this happens all the time, issue by issue, the public is where the Democrats are. Right. On things like food stamps, on things like unemployment, even on things like tax policy for the most part. So, and they trust Democrats more on those things. But the yelling and the screaming and the getting people angry and feeling like they're getting a raw deal, that's what gets the votes, that gets people to vote against those interests. They're not voting for the candidates who give them what they want. They're voting for the candidates that...
I think you underestimate the intelligence of
there's
voters.
a lot of fodder here for the fire, considering the popularity of the president, which is very low. The economy is very sluggish, and Obamacare. I mean, there's a lot for congressional candidates and U.S. Senate candidates to chew on the Republican side to talk about why change needs to come.
But those people are already predisposed to vote for conservative Republican candidates. And you don't need to stir them up with what I think is fairly hateful speech. I really find it...
I'm glad you said it.
It's
I didn't
very...
see anything hateful in those speeches.
I don't care. This is a democracy, and I hate to be so naive and innocent. It's not necessary to scream and yell and attack people. You can say, you know what? I disagree with every single thing Obama does. I disagree with everything Harry Reid does. I don't care. But there's no reason to personalize and stride about it, and the tone of those remarks to me is objectionable.
Well, I think folks are very passionate. I don't think they're offensive. They're
Especially
not
in a room
offensive.
full of other conservatives.
You know, I'm happy for one thing with this event every year. It's good theater, you know.
It is.
And I normally don't take cheap shots, but it's nice to see that Texas Governor Rick Perry, that he remembers now, or does he not, that he wanted to close the Department of Education.
Right.
Remember that that debate?
He got a
And
list out of
we were
40,
told
yeah.
he was the greatest thing since sliced bread,
Well-
and he couldn't remember what agency he wanted to close, and a live debate.
It happens. Everybody goose up every now and then.
This is true. This
So
is
that,
true.
that happens, but, which is why he wasn't maybe perhaps picked as the nominee. But I've been to CPAC multiple times.
You have?
Multiple times.
They let people like me and you in?
Absolutely. Hey, not only they roll out the red carpet.
All right, we're gonna win, brother. We're gonna switch
Big
gears.
tent Republican Party, baby.
We're gonna switch gears on our. You know, there's nothing better than a politician who's out of office and is free to say what he or she really thinks. Former New York Governor David Paterson did not disappoint in part one of his conversation with Dominic last night. Hear what he's got to say in part two next.